PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here in the sports and entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and we have an amazing, awesome, fantastic show planned for you tonight here on Vegas Hockey Hub. If you are on the PR Connections website, welcome in. Scroll around, look at all the other shows we have on here. We have about a dozen shows here on the network, so I highly advise going to PRConnectionsRadio.com, or if you're on the website, to keep scrolling and looking at all of the great shows we have on here, including Vegas Hockey Hub. If you are on the PRConnectionsRadio.com YouTube channel, welcome in. If you can, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And it would be great to check out all the other shows we upload, as PRConnectionsRadio.com does every single day here on YouTube. And if you are on our YouTube channel, Vegas Hockey Hub, welcome in. Don't forget to turn on notification bell so not miss any content we upload to the Vegas Hockey Hub YouTube channel. We upload daily on here. And if you want to go to our social media, so at PR Connections Radio, it is at PR Connections Radio. And if you want to help and support Vegas Hockey Hub, go to at Vegas Hockey Hub. On tonight's edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be discussing the Stanley Cup champion, Nic Hague. And I'll say this about Nic Hague. He is an interesting player to discuss, because when it comes to Nic Hague, he is someone who is one of the rare players who was not only just drafted by Vegas, not only was he a prospect in Vegas, but he ended up making the roster, earning a daily spot on the Vegas Golden Knights, and is now a Stanley Cup champion because of your Vegas Golden Knights. So, as we get into it tonight, his statistics as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, as an NHL player, he has had 59 career points in over 200 games in the NHL. But to tell you the story correctly, we need to go back just a little bit. As Nic Hague got his start with the Steelheads of the OHL. And for anybody who doesn't know, the OHL stands for the Ontario Hockey League. As a matter of fact, Nicholas Hague came from Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. And when it comes to Nic Hague, he not only did become a good player for the Steelheads, but he was somebody who over time developed and became a solid player in the Ontario Hockey League. As Nic Hague, he played there in 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. So his first year playing for the Steelheads of the OHL, in 66 games, had 14 goals, 24 points, and a good 84 penalty minutes for the Steelheads. The one takeaway that Nic Hague had as a member of the OHL was that Nic Hague was willing to drop the gloves. Nic Hague was always known as somebody who was able to dish it and take it too. When it came to Nic Hague, he was someone who you could trust and someone you could count on to do well on offense and do well on defense. And as the Steelheads made it to the OHL playoffs in 2016, they got bounced in the first round, and Hague only had 2 points in 7 games. So the next season, entering season number 2 as a Steelhead, 2016-2017, he played one less game. He played 65 games, but his stats went up in every single category. He added 4 more goals, went up to 18. He had 18 more assists with 28, and he added a whopping 22 points from the year before, adding 46 points on the year in 2016-2017. And if it doesn't even make it better, Nic Hague broke the triple digits for penalty minutes. He went from 84 in year one to 107 penalty minutes in 2016-2017. If that really doesn't tell you how much Nic Hague would like to drop the gloves and be physical, I don't know what is. But he also did something for the Steelheads in 2016-2017. He was a part of a Steelheads team that made it all the way to the OHL final in the 2016-2017 OHL playoffs. And in 18 games, as the Steelheads would do pretty well, he would actually end up helping that team get to the finals. And as he did, he had just one goal and 18 points in 31 playoff games. But in that 2017 playoffs, where he really established himself, he had 12 points, 19 penalty minutes in 18 games. So he essentially had a penalty minute per game, and he got a point in 3 out of 4. In 3 out of every 4 games, Nic Hague would score a point. So after this 2016-2017 season, Nic Hague would be part of the OHL All-Star team in 2016-2017. And I'm going to kind of segue real quick, because this 2016-2017 OHL All-Star team is actually legit. I don't know why this is. I don't know why this is the way it is. But the OHL All-Stars, man, this team was elite. Like, they had so many good players on this team when it came to the OHL. So I will point this out to everyone watching, everybody who's watching. When it comes to the OHL All-Stars, and this is actually a team. This is a team that they assemble every single year. They assemble an All-Star team with the OHL. So for the OHL in 2016-2017, not only did you have Nic Hague, who is already a good player, but in 2016-2017, you had NHL players like, for example, Owen Tippett, who is now a member of the Florida Panthers, who is part of the Philadelphia Flyers as well. You also had Anthony Cirelli. He was part of that team. You had Will Bitton, who went on to the NHL. You had Mitchell Stevens, who went on to the NHL. There are so many players on the 2016-2017 OHL All-Star team that made it to the team. So there's a lot of members of the 2016-2017 OHL All-Stars who were not only just drafted, but they eventually would become players in the NHL. A whopping 16 players would go on to the NHL from the OHL All-Star team in 2016-2017. And I'll give credit where credit is due. In 2017-2018, Nic Hague would go one extra step in this season. His final year playing junior hockey, in 67 games, he would have a whopping 35 goals as a defenseman, 43 assists, 78 points, and 105 penalty minutes. So Nic Hague would be voted once again and would earn a spot on the OHL All-Star team for 2017-2018. And I'm also going to mention on that team, you also had Nic Hague, but you had Sean Durzi from the LA Kings. You had Connor Timmins from the Colorado Avalanche. You also had Morgan Frost. There was some really good players on this team, but there was one teammate he had on there that would get drafted to Vegas in the same draft as him. So part of the 2017-2018 OHL All-Star team, Nic Hague would share the same roster as Nick Suzuki. Yes, another reason why Nick Suzuki was that great. He was named to the 2017-2018 OHL All-Star team alongside Nic Hague. And we've already talked enough about Nick Suzuki, but I just wanted to point that out. That Nick Suzuki and Nic Hague were both on the same roster as they were on the OHL All-Star team in 2017-2018. So Nic Hague's his stats for the Ontario Hockey League: 67 goals, 81 assists, 148 points, once again as a defenseman, a plus 28, and a little under 300 penalty minutes in less than 200 games played in the Ontario Hockey League. And this is kind of a quick segue real quick, but Nic Hague would also be selected to Team Canada for the International Ice Hockey Federation Championship. He would be on the Team Canada under-18 roster for 2016. Now, Team Canada would finish 4th in the tournament. He would have only 2 points in 7 games. But something interesting about that roster I really want to point out is he also had some really good players on that team as well. I mean, I'm not just saying this because they had a lot of good players on these rosters, but Canada in their 2016 under-18 roster had some players that eventually would earn their way into the NHL. So not only would you have Nic Hague, but you also had guys like Logan Stanley, who was with the Winnipeg Jets, Dante Fabro, who is with the Nashville Predators. You also had Stuart Skinner, who is now the starting goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers. And just to put a little bit more of a twist on it, 2 current Golden Knights players were also on the same roster as Nic Hague. On the 2016 under-18 roster for Team Canada, they would have Brett Howden and Maxime Comtois on that same roster. So I don't know if that tells you how good the Vegas Golden Knights have been in terms of picking players, or if Team Canada was just really good at having Golden Knights players on their roster. So Brett Howden, Maxime Comtois, and Nicholas Hague were all on the Team Canada roster for the 2016 under-18 team. So for Nic Hague, after having an excellent junior career in the Ontario Hockey League, after being part of Team Canada, he would be selected by the Vegas Golden Knights in the 2nd round of the 2017 NHL entry-level draft. And I do want to mention that Nic Hague was actually the 4th player taken by the Vegas Golden Knights, and yet he is the only one remaining out of those 4 players. Cody Glass went first. He's now in Nashville. Nick Suzuki went 2nd. He's in Montreal. And Eric Brandstrom is now in Ottawa. So who knew that if you would have told me 6 years ago that their 2nd round pick would still be on the roster that wins a Stanley Cup, and none of the 1st round picks they selected would still be on the team, I would have said you are crazy and I want to get you tested. But sure enough, that's what ended up happening. So Nic Hague, who was taken in the 2nd round, would end up being a core piece of the Vegas Golden Knights of the foreseeable future, and the trio of 1st round picks taken before him would not even be here for the long-term future. And I want to point out one special thing I noticed about the 2nd round. Because this 2nd round, it was loaded with talent. I don't know if anybody picked up on this, but this 2nd round, the Buffalo Sabres took goaltender Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who not only has one of the best names in all hockey, but you also ended up having a backup role in Buffalo as a goaltender. You had Maxime Comtois taken in the same 2nd round as Nic Hague was taken. He'd be taken later by Anaheim. You also had an all-star taken in the same draft. You had Jason Roberson, who is from the Dallas Stars. Somebody who was taken 5 picks after Nic Hague. So that 2nd round was loaded with talent. The 2017 NHL draft was good when it came to talent. Nic Hague was a part of it. So I will say, when it comes to the NHL entry draft, Maxime Comtois and Nic Hague were both in the second round of the 2017 NHL draft. And what I also said was that when it comes to Nic Hague, when it comes to the 2017 draft, he was the fourth player taken by Vegas, but the only one still left 6 years later. So for Nic Hague, this would be an interesting journey for him, because Nic Hague would end up going to the AHL, and Nic Hague would play 3 seasons in the AHL for the Chicago Wolves. There's also the same Nic Hague that ended up progressing and getting better in the AHL for Chicago. Now, after a small 5-game cup of coffee in the AHL 2017-2018, having only 1 point in 5 games, he would actually be part of the Calder Cup playoffs. Chicago would get eliminated in the first round, as Nic Hague would only play 3 games there. But 2018-2019, he played in 75 games, 13 goals, 32 points, a whopping plus 31 for Chicago. And he had only 38 penalty minutes in Chicago. So him getting a bunch of penalty minutes went down once he got professional hockey. But his stats were staying around the same. So the fact that Nic Hague had 13 goals in 75 games for Chicago Wolves told you that he is still going to be an offensive-minded defenseman. That is what Nic Hague has really become. He has become one of the solid members at getting the puck in the back of the net. And he actually would help the Chicago Wolves, as in the 2018-2019 season, they would make it all the way to the Calder Cup finals in 2019. And even though the Chicago Wolves would lose to the Charlotte Checkers in the 2019 Calder Cup finals, as a matter of fact, if you want to read about a guy who was on that Charlotte Checkers team in 2019, on the team that won this matchup, click the link in the upper right-hand corner. As Nic Hague, we did a player profile on earlier this year. So if you want to go in the upper right-hand corner and hit the card for Nick Waugh, he actually was on the Calder Cup Finals team that won, and that was Charlotte. Nic Hague was on the Calder Cup Final team that lost here in Chicago. But nonetheless, when it comes to Nic Hague, he had 11 points in 22 games. That was essentially half a point per game in the Calder Cup playoffs. I also want to establish that Nic Hague only played... Nic Hague only did that much amount of games in Chicago. Like I said, 75 games in year 2, only 5 games in year 1. The final season in Chicago, before getting promoted to the NHL, Nic Hague would have 21 games, 1 goal, 10 points, and only 12 penalty minutes. So, after having a solid career in Chicago, his stats would have 14 goals, 29 assists, 43 points, with a whopping plus 27 and 101 games played. So for Nic Hague, he had a pretty successful minor league career for Vegas. And Vegas took notice, because Nic Hague was the number 2 prospect in Vegas by the time he got promoted. And Nic Hague would have his NHL debut for the Vegas Golden Knights in 2019. So on October 4th, 2019, he would make the roster. He would be part of the opening day roster, the 23-man roster in 2019. And he would make his debut on the third line against the San Jose Sharks. And he had no goals. He had no points. He didn't even take a shot. But he had a 10-minute misconduct penalty late in the game in the third period. And he would play in a little under 14 minutes of time on ice in his debut for the Vegas Golden Knights. And as I mentioned, he played 21 games in Chicago, but he had 38 games in Vegas in 2019-2020. And in that 59 games he played in 2019, he had 2 goals, 19 assists, 21 points in 59 games. So that is not bad for a rookie campaign in the NHL to have 21 points in 59 games in 2019-2020. After that, Nic Hague would play his first full season in Vegas in the 2020-2021 season. He would be on the 3rd defensive pairing. He would share time with Nick Holden. He would share time with Zach Whitecloud. And he actually would have 5 goals, 12 points in 52 games for the Vegas Golden Knights. I also want to keep in mind that, yes, he had gone from about 21 points to 17 points. A little bit of a decline, but still consistent. He also impressed, by the way, by having a plus 14 in his first full season playing in Vegas. And he actually would be rewarded by being in the 2021 NHL playoffs, as the Vegas Golden Knights would go all the way to the Western Conference Finals that year. Nic Hague was on the roster, and he would have 1 goal, 1 assist in 10 playoff games for the Vegas Golden Knights. And the next season, Nic Hague would have a respectable season. He would have 14 points, 4 of them being goals, and he would do it in 52 games. Now, the one thing I have to mention is that, yes, he would have a first full season in the NHL, but Nic Hague did not play 82 games in 2021-2022. He did not play 82 games in 2019-2020. And even during the shortened 2020 season, he only played in 52 of 56 games. So Nic Hague did not play a whole 82-game season up to that point in his career. But if you want to be taken back, in his first 3 seasons playing in the NHL, he would have had 42 points by that stretch. So you have a guy who has 42 points and would have 10 goals during that time span and would have a plus 20 as a defenseman. So Nic Hague, after having a good 3-year stretch with the Vegas Golden Knights, he would actually hold out to begin the 2021-2022 season. So Nic Hague, after having a holdout that lasted off-season, lasted through training camp, went all the way past the off-season, past the training camp, past preseason, eventually Nic Hague would be rewarded with a new contract on the opening week of the NHL season. Kelly McCrimmon would sign Nic Hague to a $6 million contract over 3 years to stay in Vegas past 2025. And I want to mention that Nic Hague in 2022, 2023 really established himself as a consistent, good defenseman on the bottom pairing. So 17 points, back to the same that he was in 2020, 2021. He'd only missed 1 game that entire season. But what Nic Hague would do is that when the Vegas Golden Knights got to the Stanley Cup Finals, he would help them win the Stanley Cup, as he would score 6 points, 2 of them being goals, by the way, as the Vegas Golden Knights would go on to win the Stanley Cup Finals. And I have to give credit where credit is due. When it comes to Nic Hague, I give a lot of respect to the fact that Nic Hague is a solid core member of the bottom pair in Vegas. No, is he really going to be a top pairing guy someday? Most likely not. Is Nic Hague right now somebody who could be on the second defensive pairing? Unless somebody gets injured, unless somebody gets taken out of action, the answer would most likely be no. As of right now, Nic Hague has been on the same defensive pairing since 2019. This is year 5 of Nic Hague being a bottom line defenseman, being a third defensive pairing. And it's not bad. Trust me, it's not bad to play over 220 NHL games as a third defensive pairing. But what I'm going to point out is that Nic Hague is probably never going to be a first-line defensive pairing. I don't see him having that upside. But what I could see Nic Hague being is somebody who will be in Vegas for a long time. I will not be surprised if after his contract is up, which is in 2025, that Kelly McCrimmon extends Nic Hague. I would not be shocked if the 24-year-old from Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, would end up being a long-standing member of the Vegas Golden Knights. It would not shock me at all if Nic Hague ends up becoming a constant in Vegas, because he's already played 5 seasons in Vegas. He is currently somebody that has been here since day one. A lot of people talk about the misfits, but Nic Hague was drafted in 2017. He was part of the inaugural draft class for the Vegas Golden Knights. So just like Zach Whitecloud, just like Nic Hague, those two are the best members of the 2017 draft class for Vegas. And yes, I know that Brett Howden, I know that you have certain players like that came from the 2017 draft. But in terms of players that were brought in by Vegas, Nic Hague and Zach Whitecloud are really the only 2 members from the 2017 draft who have made an impact here in Vegas. So this was our player profile on Nic Hague, talking about him. I want to know from everybody watching around the world, do you agree or do you disagree that Nic Hague is going to be a long-standing member of the Vegas Golden Knights? Do you see him as somebody who could be like a Braden McNabb? Could he be somebody that could be, let's just say, for example, a Shea Theodore, somebody who has been here for so many years that when he's on the ice, he's going to be there every single game. So for Nic Hague, I like the potential. He's got good size. And I will say, for a guy who is 6'6", he is by far the tallest defenseman when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights. And when it comes to Nic Hague, he is somebody who's not afraid to toss his weight around. He is not someone who is shy about getting his body in front of the puck and blocking shots left, right, and center. So I will say for Nic Hague, it's going to be interesting to see what he does long term. And until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. This is Vegas Hockey Hub. And once again, go to prconnectionsradio.com, check out the website, and look at all of the content on there. A dozen shows on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. And if you're on the YouTube channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on notification bell, not miss any content. And if you are on our social medias, at PR Connections Radio and at Vegas Hockey Hub, don't forget to share and tell all your friends around the world to like, share, and subscribe to Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you go to our Twitter, at Vegas Hockey Hub, I post there every single day. We put out new content daily. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, at Ian Rachiele18, that is IANRACHIELE 18. So until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go!
PR Connections Radio presents